Hi, Kermit here. You're listening to the Power Movement.
Welcome to the Powell Movement. I'm your host, Mike Powell, and this week it's back to snowboarding. And my guest is known for his half-pipe snowboarding, but really, he's just a snowboarder who happens to kill it in the pipe. He's not defined by it, although he kind of is. I'm talking about Ben Ferguson, and on the podcast, we talk about Ben's life and times in and out of the Olympic spotlight. Before we get into his podcast, I want to ask you to follow me on Instagram at the Powell Movement. And speaking of Instagram, I'm going to be running a bunch of contests on the gram this season. Make sure you look at the image I put up each Monday to find out what you need to do to enter and win. If social media contests aren't for you, you can also enter to win a pair of Spy Helm 2 sunglasses by signing up for my number 2's letter on my website. The drawing for this is November 1st, and I will contact the winner. Finally, I want to thank Roy Tuscany and all the good people at the High Fives Foundation. They sent me an amazing jacket, and they're making a difference in a lot of people's lives. I also want to thank my great sponsors. They are Evo, Rescue Water, the 10 Barrel Brewery, Outdoor Research, and Spy Optic. They make the show happen, so please use the codes in their ads and buy some products. And now, let's talk to Ben Ferguson.
I'm good, man. Sorry about that.
No problem. You have a big night last night?
Yeah, kind of. We went for it a little bit. Nothing too crazy, but definitely couldn't drive home. Had to go pick up the truck.
That's very responsible of you.
Yeah. Trying to get better at that.
Yeah, I think this is the time that you need to get primed because it's almost premiere season for you, or premiere season started for you, hasn't it?
Yeah, I've gone to a couple premieres for sure. Definitely haven't gone to like that many, but it is premiere season. I've only been to 1 or 2 so far, I guess.
And you have 2 projects this year that are out, right?
Well, the 10 barrel thing I did was like a little shoot we did up at Mount Bachelor. It was like just only a week.
But I'm going to refer to that as a project because they're one of my sponsors as well, and I'm going to pretend like it is a huge movie and no beer company's ever put one out before.
Okay, dope. Yeah, so we had that project going. Pretty dope. Yeah, just saw that movie, actually. Curtis and Ejak killed it. Lucas Walks killed it. Yeah, I got that, and then Absinthe, too. I got a little part in Absinthe. I haven't even seen that yet, though.
And how did 10 Barrel turn out? Pretty good?
Yeah, I thought 10 Barrel turned out pretty rad. Kevin edited it pretty cool, and there was tons of good footage in it.
And that's a different one because you usually don't see movies with skiers and snowboarders in them. I don't think there's any skiers in your Absinthe movie.
Oh, no, definitely not.
And there probably hasn't been since the 16, 18 years that company's been around.
For sure.
Was that a first time that you went on a shoot with people that skied as well?
No, I wouldn't say that. I mean,
a video shoot where you're actually putting together something.
I've filmed with skiers in the backcountry before, and I've filmed with skiers just like up at Mount Bachelor before, but that was probably the first time that the footage was edited together, for sure.
I guess that's more what I'm thinking about. You don't really see them together in the same projects except for a Jeremy Jones section in TGR.
Yeah, exactly.
So you have a beer sponsor. How old are you?
I am 23.
Do you have a card that gets you all kinds of free stuff at the breweries as a 23-year-old?
Yeah, it's pretty nice. They hook it up. We get pallets of beer, like anytime I want, really. There's a pub right down the street from my house, so I can just like drive over there and pick up beer whenever. And yeah, they give me a little money card, and I can go in there, take the homies, buy everybody dinner, buy everybody drinks. It's not a bad deal, that's for sure. They hook it up. Plus, their food is like amazing there. Like, I love the food.
I like the garlic bread bites. I think is my favorite thing there.
Yeah, man. I think it changes. Like, every different pub you go to has different food. Like, they have a few staples, like the nachos are pretty much everywhere you go. But then other than that, like, the whole menu changes. And I guess the pizza is pretty standard. They kill it.
Your story is interesting because you come from a line of athletes. I think your dad was a collegiate football player and started snowboarding early in the world of snowboarding.
My dad did play football. Yeah, he was a football player, high school wrestler. Was thinking about maybe going to the Olympics for wrestling back in the day. And then he kind of like started snowboarding back in the day as well. So he was actually early involved in snowboarding. Like, he grew up in Boise, Idaho. They were riding up at Bogus Basin. And then my mom didn't start until like I started. But yeah, the whole family shreds now.
Do you make fun of your dad for being a wrestler and having to wear wrestling clothes when he was younger?
It's pretty goofy for sure. He doesn't give a shit though.
Because I guess he'll just take you down and be like, shut up.
Yeah, exactly. There's no way I can take him. He's gnarly. He knows all the little tricks.
And eventually your dad goes to Indiana for school. I don't know if you're born yet or you kind of have your early years at IU?
Yeah, I'm not actually sure. I was born in Boise, then we moved to Indiana, and then my two brothers were born, and then we moved to Bend. Probably in Indiana for like 3 or 4 years.
Bend's where all your memories start?
Pretty much. Like, I have vague memories of Indiana, like the street we lived on and stuff.
When you think back to childhood in Bend and then you look at your town now, how has that place changed?
Man, it's grown so much. It's crazy.
Is it a good thing?
I think there's positive things to it, but being here when it was smaller, you just like realize things that kind of suck about it now. Mainly just like more traffic. It's harder to get around. That's pretty much it though, honestly. Other than that, like basically there's just more businesses. There's like cooler restaurants to go to and people are just kind of thriving. So that's pretty cool. Definitely driving up to the mountain can suck now. Lift lines are getting worse, but the mountain's doing good. So it's kind of like there's bad things, but all around it's a good thing, I think.
The economy's booming. I'm sure all the home prices are skyrocketing there. And it's like the coolest place in America to live or one of those like every year in Outside Magazine or something like that.
Yeah, for sure.
Dude, the locals like seeing that?
Definitely not. It's kind of too late now, though. It's happening. People are moving. You kind of just have to accept it.
And in your childhood, do you play any team sports? Because I think if your dad's a big-time football player, he might try to guide you into a sport. Does that ever happen for you?
For sure. Like, I remember way back in the day when I was a little kid, we played football, like, just in the yard. And then I played football all the way through high school. Played a little bit of soccer when I was younger. Never really got into, like, baseball or anything. It's pretty much just football and snowboarding.
Were you a good football player?
I was good until everybody grew, and I didn't.
Okay.
But I actually did love it. It was super fun. But yeah, I was kind of pretty small in high school. Didn't really hit my growth spurt until like junior year. That kind of hurt me out on the field, out on the gridiron. But it was still fun. I liked being on a team. It was like good bonding experience. Got some really good homies because of that game.
Then getting into the mountains, your dad's a mountain guy, like you said. He's the one who brings everybody, I would think, to Bend, and I would think Bachelor is probably a reason.
Yeah, it definitely was.
Your dad gets you a snowboard, and do you guys just start going every weekend?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, I was like 6 years old, I think, the first time we went up. I think I got like a board and like boots and everything for Christmas. First year, only went up probably like 2 times with my pops. But then the next year, started going way more and got way more into it and got like good enough to the point where it was like really fun.
When I grew up, it was a different era and you started skiing first. But with you didn't have to start skiing. Snowboarding was already big. But one thing with snowboarding is your first 2-3 days, it seems like for anybody over maybe 10 or 12, it's a few days of pain before you figure out your edges and you don't have those really hard slams where you catch an edge.
For sure.
When you're a kid, I can think hitting the ground pretty hard, catching that edge for the first few times, it can really turn a kid off to anything, really, if it hurts. Do you remember any of the pain of starting to snowboard?
Yeah, man. Like, I definitely, pretty sure I cried, like, the first run. I remember definitely, like, toe edge, scorpion. Yeah, I was bailing all over the place. Definitely.
Is that why you only went a couple times?
Yeah, I think so. And I was like pretty young. My dad was probably busy. He probably didn't want to be babysitting me up there the whole time. He had dudes he liked riding with. But that's not why. Like, I remember the first day, like, first round sucks. But then by the end of the day, I was like stoked. It was super fun. I kind of figured it out. But definitely, like, there's some pain involved. That's for sure.
When you're 6, you get your first few days on snow. When you're 7, you're riding as much as you can. You start getting stoked on it. And then when you're 8, is that when you get put into a program?
Yeah, that is actually exactly kind of how it went. Like, I think I was 7 and I did like local, like ski school kind of stuff, but only like on a weekend or something. And then I turned 8 and I started doing this thing called Mount Bachelor Sport Education Foundation. And that's like where I met all my homies and started shredding like a bunch. Like every weekend we would go up and ride with them.
Was it like a free ride program? Because when I think of Bachelor, I think of a lot of fun terrain, a lot of jibby stuff, a lot of wind lips and cool shit. Are you just going and riding with the coaches?
I mean, pretty much it kind of just depended on the coach you were riding with, kind of whatever they were into for sure, which we had some pretty rad coaches. And I think Dave Reynolds was One of my coaches way back in the day, he actually coaches the U.S. slopestyle team now.
Yeah, which is crazy.
He was like one of my first coaches. And yeah, man, we would just ride bachelor, like ride whatever. It taught me how to like POW. Like before doing NBSCF, I like hated that stuff. I would go in there, I'd get stuck. I'd have to like unstrap and crawl out. You're like a little kid. Like powder is not that rad when you're a little kid and you don't know what you're doing. But then like I learned how to love it. You know, we would go build like little kickers and trying to learn 360s and stuff. And then if the park was good, we would go into the park. And yeah, it was rad. That's like when I started competing too. So yeah, it was a good little program. And that's where I met all my like buddies too. And then we started hanging out beyond snowboarding.
The coaching that you had then, because if you're in a different program, if you live in Vail, you're going to be lapping the park all day long, I would think, and be in a regimen. But you're in Bachelor, and it's much more laid-back place in general. And I would think the coaches are living there to ride every day. And when they're coaching you, it's still going to be just riding every day, and you'll go in the park when you have to.
For sure. That was kind of it. Like, if it's good in the park, like if it's a sunny day and there's like no good snow anywhere else, or you would go to the park. But if it was like good for boarding, we were going to just go board the mountain.
And that's the reason that you're the rider you are today, that you can ride all types of terrain, is because your coaches back then weren't focused on you getting that extra half a rotation in the park.
I guess so. I mean, yeah, I think Bachelor just kind of is like a good little spot for learning how to snowboard on all sorts of different stuff.
In contests at that point, are you beating kids that are older than you when you're an 8-year-old?
Kind of like the first one I ever did, it was like 12 and under. I think I got 4th, so I did like pretty good. I was definitely probably beating some 12-year-olds and stuff, but it was pretty competitive. We had like a super competitive little group. Like I remember Ben Watts, he was this little prodigy out of Bend, Oregon. And when he was like 10 years old, he did like all 4 900s and stuff. He was crazy.
At 10 years old?
Yeah, he was a bad boy for sure. He was like on Burton way back in the day. He was like one of the original Smalls team members. So he lived in Bend, and then the Warbingtons as well. We all did NBSCF and like competed together. And then Garrett Warnick was in there. We had like a pretty solid little group of shredders that all like really pushed each other, and it was pretty cool for sure.
Doing all 4 900s at 10, where is he today?
I think he kind of burnt himself out on the whole thing. I think he's in a band and like lives in Portland now.
Well, that sounds fun too.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're not going to snowboard, you might as well be in a band. I was going to say, if you had to get a real job, it might have sucked if he got burnt out and he should have just powered through it.
For sure.
But you end up going on to nationals. You're around 10-ish at this point, and you take first in pipe and second in slope, which is crazy.
I think it was actually the other way around, but yeah, that was crazy because I didn't really know how good I was, really. Like, I thought I was going to go to nationals and it was going to be like I didn't think that was going to happen anyway. You know what I mean? I had no expectations at all.
You were happy to be invited because you're a 10-year-old kid with a big smile on your face because you're going?
Yeah, exactly. And because I would get beat by all the dudes back home. So I like didn't really think I had a chance.
You do have a chance, and you do really well. And I think it's when you get hooked up with Burton for the first time and that whole Smalls program begins for you.
Yeah, I was like 10 years old. It was the summer after nationals, and it was like Kyle Mack, Hans and Nils Minnick, and then Ben Watts were all up in Mount Hood shooting with Burton. And I like went up there for a day. I remember my mom took me up, and I like got introduced to Chaka, Michael Gardzina, and damn, why can't I remember his name right now? Yeah, got introduced to those Burton dudes and started shredding with them, and then I got hooked up that next winter. It's pretty sick.
And as a 10-year-old, when you get hooked up with Burton, you're not jaded with what anybody's saying at the industry at that time, so you'd probably look and you're like, that is the coolest brand out there, and they're hooking you up. I mean, that has to be a dream come true, I would think. Does it get to your head at all?
Like I said, like all the kids I was shredding with at Bachelor, like everyone was hooked up. So it wasn't really like that crazy of a thing. And then actually back in the day, I remember like I was super into nitro boards and Volcom outerwear, and that was like the dream. But then Burton started hooking it up, and I love Burton.
Yeah, they've done more than anybody else has done for snowboarding. It's arguable that they invented it.
Yeah, exactly. Invented that shit.
And then it's local and regional comps until you're 13. And then you head to the U.S. Open and it's a junior jam you compete in. Is that open eyes for you?
Yeah, I haven't thought about this stuff in a long time. It's kind of crazy. I'm on a little memory lane trip.
I'm going to take you all the way through it.
Right on. Yeah, 13, go to the Burton U.S. Open. Super, nervous, very nervous. This is, the elite, right? This is the biggest thing I've done yet, I remember. And, it was gnarly. Half pipe out there was super icy. There's all these mad good kids. Nils was there doing back-to-back nines. Scotty James was there doing killing it too. And then Jan Scherer was there as well. I ended up getting third in that one. And then Jan Scherer got second and Scotty got first. But it's pretty crazy because we're all still boarding now. These three dudes are still doing half pipe contests.
When you were 13, who would have known that podium would continue on?
But you look back at junior jam history and it's all Pat Moore's name's in there, and I think there's some Matroni in it. There's so many dope snowboarders that did the junior jam back in the day.
It's being associated with the U.S. Open and being part of that whole event. That's the most, I hate to use the word core, but I feel core contest in snowboarding. It's not the X Games.
It's the best contest in snowboarding, hands down. The Burton U.S. Open. It's so fun.
Getting third there, it puts you on the map to everyone in snowboarding. And do you notice that you're starting to get a lot more attention, or is it still you're just part of the crew?
Still kind of just a part of the crew, really. I did good. Dudes were stoked. I remember Chaka being super stoked. I wasn't catapulted into some sort of elite, It's pretty much the same thing. Maybe got a little bit more hooked up.
Any money at this point or no?
I don't really think so. I don't think money at that point. Maybe for contests, if I did good, I'd get a couple $100 or something.
Yeah, you don't have to give a 13-year-old much to make them happy.
Yeah, exactly.
How about your parents? Are they fully supportive? Are they pushing you into comps? Do they want you to win? Or is it more go there and have a good time?
Yeah, I mean, the way my dad...
I lost you. I got some tests from the emergency broadcast system and it cut everything off.
I think I actually got the same thing.
But you were saying the way my dad brought us up or something to that effect.
Yeah, so the way he grew up, he played sports. He was a competitive guy. If we were going to do it, might as well try your hardest, But also just mad supportive and definitely just wanted us to have fun too. But have to be kind of a little bit serious, You can't just, I don't know.
I agree that you have to be a little bit serious, but when you're 13, I mean, I guess that's when it starts to get serious. We're going to talk a lot about contests in this podcast, but I realize that you're not just a contest guy, and I think that's why everybody was pulling for you to win at the Olympics is because you're the snowboarder who happens to compete because he's really good at that as well. But as contests progress in life, does it ever wear on you? When you show up at an event and everybody expects you to do really well and you have all this pressure on yourself, does that bother you ever?
Yeah, for sure. It's not necessarily pressure from people expecting me to do well. It's just they get old, man. It's the same formula. It's that same half pipe. You do them in terrible weather. Sometimes you get some good weather. The whole thing is just kind of draining at some point. You got to go through qualifiers. It's just so structured, and that's what gets old about contests for sure. Definitely the pressure, the nerves, that gets to you too. If you're falling all the time, that's the worst.
Is it a kind of attitude where if you go in and you fall once or twice and it just gets in your head and you're going to have a shitty day, or can you turn that around?
Dude, I don't know. Sometimes I fall and then next round I'll pull it off. It's kind of just random. I don't really know. Sometimes it works out, sometimes it doesn't. And for whatever reason, I can land everything in practice and then go into the contest and blow it. Or it can go the other way around. I'll fall all practice and be feeling terrible and super pissed. And then I'll get up there and I'll do the run perfect. It's super random. I don't know.
Speaking of super random, I'm going to take a break real quick to talk about my sponsors. And my first sponsor is Evo. And with winter right around the corner, it's time to get your gear. And there's no better place to do it than at Evo. Whether you are in one of their stores in Denver, Seattle, or Portland, or online, you will find that Evo has all the brands, an approachable staff, and the best website in the game. Evo is known for being founded by pro skier Bryce Phillips and creating culture in a space where it had started to disappear. And they also give back to local communities. Speaking of giving back, for listening to this show, Evo is going to give you 10% off your entire order. When you check out, enter the code capital TPM, the number 10, no spaces, and you'll get that 10% off when you check out of evo.com. My next sponsor is Rescue Water, and they are all about proactive recovery. What does that mean to you? Well, think of it like this. If you're really tired, you skip the coffee and you grab yourself an energy drink. Well, if you really need to hydrate, like when you're done working out, getting off the mountain, or going to bed after a big night, skip the sports drink and drink a cold Rescue Water. It replaces electrolytes much better than your traditional sports drink, and it's a difference you can really feel. Make Rescue Water work for you by heading over to rescuewater.com, that's RESQ water.com, and save 20% on a 12-pack case by entering the code RESQ water TPM. That's all one word. My next sponsor is Outdoor Research. And I've been wearing their outerwear since I moved to Seattle in 2000 because it works better than anything else on the market. It's developed and tested in the Northwest, so you know it's gear you can trust. OR is committed to improving your experience with exceptional product, so you don't have to think about your gear while you're out on your journey. But don't just take my word for it. In this year's Powder Magazine Apparel Guide, there was one brand voted Apparel of the Year. It was Outdoor Research. So when you're shopping for outerwear this winter, get the best. Head on over to outdoorresearch.com and get 15% off your order with the checkout code Powell, the number 15, all one word, all in caps. Those are my sponsors, so we will get back into your life. And you're getting into high school and you're a competitive snowboarder. You're traveling pretty much the world, I would think, by the time you're 15, 16 for snowboarding. And is high school still high school for you?
It's definitely weird, right? Like, never there. So if you're gone for more than 10 days, you get like kicked out, basically. You have to re-enroll when you go back. But I did like a bunch of online school, and I did these excused absences. I would just go around and get the assignments from my teacher, and then when I was gone, I would do them all and bring them back. And then I had online classes that I would just like do, and honestly, I would cheat on them a lot. Like, it's pretty easy.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, so high school was weird, and then like I had high school homies too, right? But I was never really there. So I didn't really hang with them too much. And then I had like the snowboard homies who I was always hanging with. It was like these two different worlds kind of.
Yeah, and you played football in high school?
Yeah, I played freshman year. I actually played sophomore year too, actually. I kind of stopped because I was getting so many concussions. I was getting concussions snowboarding, and then like I was hitting my head a bunch back then, flinging my body around.
If you're hitting your head back then and flinging your body around on the football field and on your snowboard, can you put a number on the concussions you think you've had?
I can't. There's been a lot.
With all the protocol in football now where you see anybody whose head touches the ground getting pulled off and put into a little area to see if they're okay, and the long-term effects that people are figuring out, from NFL players to Dave Mira to just about anybody who hits their head a lot, do you think about you?
I do, for sure. I've talked to a couple people. Nowadays, if I like hit my head, I definitely chill. Yeah, because your head's important, right? You don't want to ruin that. So I definitely like take it easy now if I hit my head. But it's kind of just the game, right? Like, that's going to happen. It's bound to happen.
Say you hit your head in the pipe really hard and you're out for a second. There's no protocol where someone's going to pull you off and say you can't ride again if you can get up and you can be yourself right away. And I'm sure that's happened before, where you've done a run and you probably don't even remember most of it. Or is that me just speculating?
They're pretty good nowadays, actually. There's like medical teams on the side, and if they see you smoke yourself, and if you like are actually out, they'll pull you for sure. They've gotten pretty good at it. And then like the US team has a super good PT, and he's always checking, and he'll do all the tests and clear you when you're good to go.
Have you ever not been able to ride because a doctor on the US team said, hey, you hit your head that run and you can't take your next run?
Yeah, like down in New Zealand a couple years ago, I smoked my head. We were just riding too. It wasn't like competing or anything. I smoked my head pretty hard. Definitely like was out for a little bit and had a pretty good concussion and just kind of had to chill for like almost a week.
Wow.
Yeah, it sucked. Weather was pretty chilly anyway though, so it wasn't like that bad, but just like chilling for a week gets old, you know? especially when you're down in New Zealand and you just want to ride your snowboard.
Are you a kid with a lot of energy?
Yeah, for sure. Like, I get mad bored if you're just sitting around all the time. You got to be doing something.
So we'll jump back in your career. In 2010, you're competing on the Rev Tour, and you do well in some, you don't do well in some, but you win the final stop in pipe. And coming off that win, you're going into 2011. So you're 15, 16, and you're on track to be one of the next Olympians. And there's a lot of pressure on your shoulders, but are you putting any pressure on yourself? Are you thinking, hey, in a couple of years, I could be in the Olympics?
Not even, man. Like, definitely wasn't even thinking about the Olympics. I honestly was just trying to, like, get as good as I could. I just wanted to keep snowboarding. I wanted to be a professional snowboarder. I wasn't thinking about, like, the Olympics or, like, contests, really. I just wanted to be hooked up. I just wanted to be able to ride for a living. So that was kind of the motivation, I guess.
In your position, riding is all that matters. The contests are just something you do. And I won't say you just do them for money, because it's probably fun every once in a while, but I'm sure you have a lot more fun when you're just riding through the park and take a lap through the pipe at the end. And then when it's time for you to drop in and it's 3, 2, 1, Ben Ferguson. I would think that that's more stress, and it's not like the fun part of snowboarding, but it's something you do just because that's your career as well.
Yeah, for sure. I would say that, like, you're pretty spot on there. Like, it's a thing that you do so you can continue to do it, right? Like, it's kind of like the job side of snowboarding.
So when you go to these contests, and it doesn't matter what the contest, you're always going to see a bunch of your friends, and that makes it a good time regardless. But is the contest part even fun, or are you just happy to get out of the way, and if you win, then it's a great day?
I mean, they can be super fun, but it kind of just depends. Like, it's like if you're into the half pipe and your buddies are there and you're like having a fun time, like riding and practicing together, like that's awesome. And then it's like a big gathering of people too, you know, so you get to see everybody. Like, usually there's a couple little parties. And then if you like are riding well, like, contests are awesome. And if you like stomp a run, that's like one of the best feelings in the world. When you get down to the bottom, you're like, I just laced that run. I did that run like just about as good as I could do. That is like an insane feeling. You get like so much adrenaline, but like also mixed with like relief and just happiness, I guess. So that's the one like cool thing about contests is like the way you feel when you're done and you do really good and you know you did the best you could do. Like, that feels pretty rad.
And then on the flip side of that, when you have a shitty day and you don't do what you want to do you leave in a bad mood, or you leave with smiles like, oh, that was fun?
You kind of just got to like brush it off. Like, I try not to let it get to me too hard. You got to go like maybe take a moment, go like into the trees and yell at yourself and then get over it. Go have a beer with your buddies. Usually helps. And then also, like, chances are you did bad. Maybe one of your homies did good. Go help them celebrate.
Your first big event is a Dew Tour event. Do you get a special invite for the Dew Tour? Or is it just like an email like, hey, we've got a slot for you? And is that a big deal to you?
Yeah, that was crazy for sure. I remember it was in Snow Basin. I think honestly what happened is like all the really good dudes were somewhere else.
Okay.
Maybe like at the Locks Open or something like that. So like a couple of the underdog dudes got in. I remember the field, but yeah, that was crazy for me. I mean, that was the biggest contest I'd ever been in, best half pipe I'd ever ridden in, and it was super cool. I remember that day pretty good. Like, I made it to finals. I qualified pretty high, was super stoked. And then I remember the day of finals, I was riding terribly, like fell in practice the whole time, super bummed. And then I actually like ended up lacing a run in the finals. And I think I got fourth. I can't really remember, but I think I got fourth. I was pretty pumped to like place that high at like a big professional contest for sure.
Everybody knows who you are already. And this more, I guess, puts you on the map as it's the 12-13 season. So the Olympics are right around the corner and you're going to make a run at it. And it looks like at this point, everything's kind of coming together for you in contests. You go on a run of like the FIS stuff where you're doing pretty well. You might not podium every week, but 2012 is a big one for you.
That was when I started getting like pretty good at riding half pipe contests for sure. I learned like a double cork. I got like a solid back nine down. I was learning how to like really ride the transition and like kind of send it a little more. So yeah, I definitely remember that year, like doing pretty good. I started riding with the US team that year, which I think helped because I started riding with dudes like Taylor Gold and Brett Esser, and they were better than me, so it kind of pushed me to do better. Yeah, it was a cool year for sure.
At this point in your life, I mean, I would think all the wins are important, but when you're setting your sights on making an Olympic team at 19, does your level of commitment increase? Are you not free riding as much? Are you hiking the pipe a shit ton? And are you doing more than you've ever done? Or are you still just the same kid and hopefully it comes together?
Honestly, I was still just the same kid. I was still just boarding. If there was POW, I would go ride POW. I wasn't like only going to ride half pipe. That's always how I've been. I'm a snowboarder first for sure. And I just do half pipe contests. But I honestly didn't even think about the Olympics at all. I didn't think I had a chance, really. I was just kind of there, like shredding, trying to do as good as I could in these contests. I wasn't really thinking about the Olympics at all. That whole qualified year, I ended up doing pretty good, though. Like, I remember that was like one of my first really big podiums, was in one of those first Grand Prix up at Copper. I got third. Taylor Gold, I think, got first, and then maybe like Greg Bretz got second. So it was pretty cool being up there. Like, Taylor was my good buddy back then, still is. And that happened. I was like, wow, maybe I could make the Olympic team. This is crazy.
What happens leading up to the Olympics? I mean, do you feel like there is a little bit of a chance that you get closer to it?
After I got that third place, I was kind of in the running. Like, it kind of looked like I would maybe make it. I can't remember where the next stop. I think the first two stops, it was like Dew Tour in Breckenridge was the first one. Shaun won. Greg got second. Or no, Greg won. Shaun got second. Taylor got third. Then the next stop, it was Copper. And I don't think Shaun was even there. But Taylor won. Greg got second. I got third. And then the next two stops, because I think there was only 4. Oh, no, they did a stop at Breckenridge, and that one got canceled. Terrible weather. People were losing their minds because it was like, oh, this Olympic year, and the weather's terrible, and we had this really shitty contest, and people were bummed, and so they, like, battled it. Like, tons of protests happened, and I got hooked up because I did terrible in that one. Didn't even make finals. You could barely move. The half-pipe was full of snow. So they did 3 contests in Mammoth, actually, which was insane. They did one day, and then they packed 2 contests into one day the next day.
That's insane.
It was psycho. But we got super lucky. Like, the weather was insane. It was Bluebird. The half pipe was super good. Everything ended up working out pretty good. But it was an insane couple days for sure. In those contests, I got another 3rd place. And then in the like standings, I ended up being like 5th for the U.S. dudes. So it was like close to making the team. But Danny bumped me. He got second at that last qualifier event. He got second. I got 3rd. And I think if I would have beat Danny, like, maybe I would have gone, or maybe I didn't have enough points. I'm not sure. But he, like, had to do really good to qualify. And he killed it. That's, like, when the switch method was everywhere. He was killing it. That shit was dope, for sure.
It's funny because I interview a lot of people who went to the Olympics, and they can usually tell me the exact detail of the fraction of the point they needed to make the team. And you almost don't even give a fuck, which is awesome. You're just kind of like, yeah, and I think Danny bumped me out. Maybe if I beat him, I would be in the running, but I don't even know. It's funny just how nonchalantly you talk about it, where it's not that big a deal.
Honestly, like, I just remember going into that year, like, I didn't really think I had a chance, but it just kind of ended up almost happening, which is pretty funny. It was cool. That was a good year for me, for sure.
Yeah, because that's your first X Games, too, which is got to be a huge milestone.
For sure, that was crazy. I remember not doing as good as I wanted to do. X Games is always kind of tough, man. It's a gnarly contest. It's always a night contest, so it's mad cold.
Yep.
Half-pipe's always super icy. And then it's like X Games, so there's all this like crazy hype and like added pressure. I remember always just being so nervous for X Games. It's a crazy contest.
The next year, you end up at the X Games, and you end up with silver.
Yeah, which is also pretty crazy, like kind of weird. That year, actually, I remember the weather was it was like super warm and kind of seemed like rainy almost during practice. You always practice when it's not completely dark. When it's not completely dark, the lights don't really work, so it's like super flat light and like really, really hard to see. So it's always like a trip. But I remember the half pipe being like almost slushy and like super fast though, which is nice. Like I could grip on the heels Because usually in X Games, that half pipe, like you cannot ride up that left wall. It's such an ice field.
Bulletproof.
Yeah, it's like bulletproof, shiny, and that's on my heel side wall too, so that sucks. But yeah, I remember practice was going all right, and then everybody did first runs, and I like landed a first run, and it was pretty good, but it wasn't anything like, I knew I could do that run better, you know?
Yeah.
And then it started just dumping snow, like puking snow, and then my brother Gabe was in this contest as well. He was like first one to drop. He drops in and like doesn't even get to the top of the wall because the snow is so just like wet and sticky on live TV. This is crazy. So then after that, like they sent Scotty, I remember too, and he said the same thing, like could not even move. And then they just called it. And I was like sitting in second place after first runs. I just kind of got gifted like an X Games medal basically, which was pretty insane. I was stoked. I took it. I was pumped. Celebrated, that's for sure. Still hanging on my wall right over here.
You could look at it as you were robbed of first place because you would have done that run better and you could have won it, but whatever, you got a silver medal. And now I'm going to take another break to talk about my final sponsors. And my next sponsor is Spy Optic. And they have been independent since '94 and taking a playful approach to everything they create. They're killing it on the innovation game this season with their new electrochromic one lens technology. If you haven't heard about the Ace EC goggle, it packs the power of 3 lenses into one by changing tints with the touch of a button. It's crazy innovation that creates one goggle for any light. It's the best goggle on the market, period. Check out spyoptic.com for all the details on the game-changing EC, as well as their newest athlete signature models and sunglasses. For listening to the show, the good folks at Spy are going to give you 20% off their entire site. When you check out of their site, use the code capital TPM, the number 20, all one word at checkout, and you will get that 20% off. My final sponsor is the 10 Barrel Brewery based out of Bend, Oregon. They are all about drinking beer outside and supporting snow sports and culture. And this year, they're doing something that no beer has ever done before. Not only are they creating a Pray for Snow lager, they've produced their own ski and snowboard film, Pray for Snow, featuring riders like Ben Ferguson, Eric Jackson, and Lucas Walks. They're truly giving back to snow culture, and you should truly give back to them by drinking their beer, preferably a lot of it. To find out more about the movie tour, beers, and pubs, head on over to 10barrel.com. So those are my sponsors, and you had just won your X Games silver, and there was another opportunity right after the X Games where you go and film with Travis Rice for the 4th phase. And does that happen like really close to the X Games?
This is actually crazy. This was super stupid. So yeah, I just got like second at X Games. I was stoked. I was partying a little bit. And then my buddy Darren Blatt was there. He's a photog. So we were going to road trip down to Jackson Hole and go out with those guys the next day. And I remember being super nervous to link up with those guys. I was like mad nervous because, you know, it's T-Rice and it's Brain Farm. But anyway, we blew it. Like we ended up leaving Aspen way too late because we probably partied a little bit too much. And then we got a couple like Colorado edibles, munched on those a little bit too much before we started the drive. And I just remember driving in this like snowstorm, super baked. And it was crazy. Definitely like edible baked, like a little bit too much. We did the whole scenario where you couldn't feel it. So we had another one and that screwed us. I didn't end up getting into Jackson until like 4:00 at night. And then we ended up going out with those dudes at like 6:00 in the morning, or we had to meet at like 7 in the morning. So I had like a couple hours of sleep, went out there with those dudes, was feeling crazy. Ended up riding like a couple little lines. And then we just like dug on these 2 big jumps all day long. Biggest builds I've ever done. And it was crazy. I remember getting back to Travis's place that night and just had the shakes and just took a shower and then passed out immediately.
And in that type of situation, while you're a snowboarder and the pipe and slopestyle up until that point in your life didn't define you, I wouldn't think you would have as much time to be in the backcountry as Travis by any means. And are you able to hang with these dudes? I mean, are you guys going out on sleds, and how does that whole thing work out?
I definitely fucked up a couple times, you know, like with the whole sled. Definitely like that made me a way better snowmobiler after being out there with those dudes, which was pretty cool. I had to rent a sled. I think I put like a couple grand worth of damage on it, like rolled it down this big icy hill climb. It was super gnarly. And then, yeah, I just remember like getting stuck every once in a while and doing like dumb shit. And Travis would like come over and dig me out. Yeah, they were super cool. They helped me out so much. Those guys were rad. And it was awesome to see the way they like worked. And yeah, I was so lucky to be hooked up with those dudes and get put on that crew. It's like pretty insane.
Yeah, and I would think when you get put in a crew like that and you just see the work ethic that they have and the skills that they have in the backcountry, it must almost open another chapter up in your brain of like, hey, I'm going to start doing this more regularly. And not that you're not going out, but I mean, they go out there. And I don't know if you had been doing that as much, but I think that you wanting to get to bigger mountains might start with that trip.
Yeah, for sure. Like I had done a couple things before that year. I filmed a Burton Presents part where that was actually the first time I like was ever in the backcountry. Me and Danny went to like Cook City, and then that was the first time I went to like Alaska. I got on a trip with like Terje in Europe and like put out a decent little part there. So that's when I was like, wow, this is the shit. Like I want to do this. But then just going out with like Pat and Travis and all those dudes and seeing the way they do it was insane. Those dudes are like mad professional. They're not messing around out there. We were waking up like insanely early every day, staying out till like dark. We were getting it. It was crazy. Helis flying around, crazy gimbals. There was like 20 dude crew of just like filmers. Yeah, it was freaking wild.
And a 20-person crew of filmers who know what they're doing. Because there's a lot of commercial shoots where Buick will try to put somebody in the mountains and get a snowboard clip, and they'll bring 40 people out with cameras, but nobody knows what they're doing. But you have all people that are tied to the sport and know what they're doing, too.
Yeah, for sure. These dudes were all like legit. They're all badasses. That was like so fun, too. Like we were working our asses off, and I was tired and scared like half the time, but it was so damn fun, too. Like it was awesome. I'm super lucky to have gotten to go out with those guys, and stoked Travis let me do it.
You went to Alaska with Pat Moore the year before, and you can see an edit online. Then you do the Travis stuff. But one thing you don't really hear about these days compared to maybe back in the day is that many pipe dudes who are taking the trips and being part of the productions that you're part of. I mean, it was once standard in snowboarding to ride pipe, ride slope, do everything, and be in the movies as well. But it seems like people are more specialized these days, and you're one of the dudes who's not specialized.
Yeah, I just love snowboarding. Like I'm not in it for one reason, really. I love being in the backcountry, and I love the way it feels when you're done with a contest. And I don't know, it's all fun. And I think it's all cool too. Like I want so badly to just have like a sick video part, you know, and then like, I think it is kind of a bummer that it's all so separated.
Do you look at someone strangely when all they want to do is hike the pipe and get as many laps as possible and be a robot and dial in their tricks, and they don't think about any of the other aspects of snowboarding? I don't want to say judge them, but do you think it's strange?
I think it's super whack. I think it's super whack. That just doesn't appeal to me. Like, that doesn't sound that fun.
No, doesn't sound like fun to me either. It sounds like work.
And that's what snowboarding is, right? Like, it's supposed to be fun. That's when I snowboard the best, too, is when I'm just, like, having a blast. I think you pretty much ask anybody, and they'll say the same thing.
I'd say they would say the same thing, but there are some people who are just programmed to compete and want to win. And
For sure.
While it's fun for them, they also don't have fun if they don't win.
Yeah, exactly.
Doesn't seem like you're that dude. But in the non-Olympic years, you're able to ride and do whatever you want, I think. You spend summers at Hood. You have a signature session at High Cascade.
Yep.
Life is good. But in terms of your finances, I mean, I would hope that snowboarding's been really good to you. Who pays you to snowboard these days?
Burton, Red Bull, and on 10 Barrel right now, I think.
What kind of car do you drive? Or what kind of big truck do you drive is my guess.
Yeah, I got myself a Toyota Tundra right now. Pretty new one. She's nice. It's good. Fit the sled in there. Terrible on gas mileage, though. I'm thinking about trying to sell it maybe and getting something a little better on that front. But yeah, it's been good to me for sure.
And then a house. Do you have a house in Bend?
Currently working on that right now. I just bought property and I'm working with a builder and I'm going to build my own little spot. So super excited for that.
Snowboarding's been really good for you because when I think of buying a house, I thought you would buy something that existed. But when you're able to buy a plot of land, is it in Bend?
It's in Bend. It's in a pretty rad spot. It's pretty sick. Like Dirksen lives up in the same zone, and like Jake Price lives up in the same zone. Courtesy, it's kind of like a little, yeah, it's a dope spot. I'm stoked on it.
You're going to have like a little compound on your property like most athletes do. Do you skate? Do you do anything like that?
Oh, I've thought about it for sure. I would love to pour some Crete and kind of like make it into the landscape, or like the patio or something, have a little skate park back there. It would be super fun.
Yeah.
There's all sorts of stuff you could do. Like, that's why I'm stoked to have like bought some land and like just be able to build whatever I want to build. And right now I'm like trying to do it more of like as an investment. So I'm building an ADU, which is like a separate little unit with a garage, and I'll live in that. And then I'm also building like a full-on house, and I'll rent that out, and I'll just live in the ADU.
Have it pretty much pay for itself?
Yeah, that's kind of the plan. I think it'll work out. It's looking pretty good right now. We'll see, though.
And how long have you been making real money in snowboarding? Because I'm sure your first couple of years, you weren't making real money. I'm not going to ask you numbers. I'm going to assume it's 6 figures. But when did real money start for you?
Real money probably started when I was around 17, 18 maybe. So it hasn't been that long. Like, I was making money, but not like real money. You know what I mean?
Yeah, you could pay a rent and bills with just money, but real money, you can buy a plot of land and build a house.
Yeah, exactly. But I've also been pretty good at saving. Like, I've been living at my parents' house. Like, so I'm gone all the time. Like, all I do is travel for snowboarding. So it just doesn't make sense to me to like pay for rent on a spot that I'm never going to be at. So I've just been trying to save as much as I can too. I'm pretty frugal, I feel like.
No stupid purchases?
The truck might have been a little much.
But it's functional. You need it for your sled.
Business write-off. Yeah, we got that going.
I know I've taken a lot of your time, and I've got like 2 more little things to go through, one being your next Olympic journey. How do you qualify this time? Does it come down to the wire, and are you really fired up on making the Olympics this time, being a little bit older? Or are you still the same attitude of, man, if I make it, cool. If I don't, that's cool too?
This year was quite a bit different. I remember like 2 summers before, I like sat down with these dudes from Red Bull, and they're like, okay, what's your goals? And I basically told them like, well, it'd be cool to go to the Olympics. And then once I said that, it was kind of like on. Like, they supported me a ton and they hooked me up a ton and just helped out as much as they could. But like, pressure was pretty insane. So I was like pretty driven this time around to go and like kind of hold it down there. So yeah, I worked my ass off the summer before. I wish I almost said I started like the winter before, because the winter before I totally just like fucked around, partied too much probably, filmed a little video project. It's called Hail Mary. Not that many people saw it, but my buddy Tyler Orton and me kind of like produced this little video. And I was super stoked on the video. And that year I actually had a little part in Absinthe that I'm super pumped on too. That's in the Turbo Dojo movie.
Okay.
But yeah, the winter before I didn't even think about the Olympics. And then that summer they're like, what are your goals? What are you trying to do? And I was like, okay, wow, I got to start working. And yeah, just snowboarded a ton, like so much half pipe. It turned all into half pipe, heavy. Went on so many different trips to like Europe and just rode these like glacier half pipes all year round. Didn't really even take a break. Went to New Zealand and just tried to learn tricks and just get runs dialed. So it was definitely a different vibe going into this next Olympic year.
So this year, it's like, I'm going to make the team, and I'm actually going to put in work. And I would think if you didn't make the team, you'd be bummed, because then you'd be like, hey, I put in work and it didn't pan out.
Exactly. I was like, oh, I better make the team. Like, I've been going hard. I'll be super bummed if I don't make it. And I'll just feel like I let a bunch of people down too. Because Red Bull really did like step up and help me out a ton. It was insane.
It's amazing what they do for their athletes. And it's almost like when you say that to them, it might just be something you're saying for that meeting. But once they hear it, it's on.
Yeah, then it's real, for sure. That's exactly how it went down. I was like, well, it'd be cool to go to the Olympics. And then it was like, boom.
They put a program together. They got you breathing out of crazy oxygen masks and doing all kinds of crazy shit. And you're like, how the fuck did I get here? But I'm going to make the team.
Yeah, straight up. That's exactly how it went. I like spent like 2-3 weeks down there just like living in some like shitty hotel room and going to the gym. It was insane. Like, I'd never done anything like that before. It was kind of gnarly. Like, I did not love it. I'll say that.
Those things are never fun unless you're a masochist, and it doesn't sound like you are. But you made it to the Olympic team. And was it close at all, or were you worried about making the team towards the end, or was it easy to get on now that you had been working harder than you've ever have?
Dude, I kind of just not to sound like cocky or anything, but I kind of just fucking killed it. Like, it was like the best I've ever ridden half pipe. I had stuff so dialed and just like felt so good on my snowboard, like right off the bat. Like, I was definitely super nervous for the contest and like had a ton of pressure on myself, but then I just started lacing runs. It was kind of crazy. I'd never really been that good at competing, but like this last year I like had my shit together and was kind of firing. So like the first contest was at Copper. I remember making finals. It was super snowy, like pretty bad conditions, and then made finals that day. Pumped on that, like just to make finals. Qualifiers sucks. Because if you don't even make it to finals, you're like, what the hell?
Yeah.
So I'm all super nervous for qualifiers. Like, made finals there, and then the contest day was beautiful, and it was like a heavy contest. I ended up getting like second in that one. I beat Shaun, which was fucking dope.
Yeah.
That was insane. I was fucking stoked on that. I know he was pissed. I'm pretty sure he didn't think I should have beat him, but fuck it. I was stoked. Yumu won that one, and then went to Dew Tour, and I podiumed there, and like, that was the first two contests, and I was pretty much like on the team. I had pretty good results. I had a first and a second, I think. And that's pretty much like the points you need to qualify.
When you say that you beat Shaun and he was pissed, I think it's funny because as talented as he is on a snowboard, it's hard to find someone who defines themselves as a snowboarder saying they wanted him to win.
For sure.
I don't really know anybody that actually says they want somebody to win anyway. Yeah. It seems like there's negative feelings towards him because maybe he eclipsed the point of being a snowboarder when he was 14 and he became something else who happened to be really awesome on a snowboard. But what are your thoughts on the mentality towards him from within, it seems like?
I mean, I got nothing but respect for the guy. He is a fucking animal, that's for sure. He's got to be like one of the hardest working dudes out there. I personally don't necessarily enjoy like watching him snowboard. It's definitely not my favorite dude to watch. His trick selection and kind of his style, I think, is not my favorite. That's for sure. I'll say that. He's also just like very, very competitive and comes off a little standoffish. And I just think people don't really like the way he like presents snowboarding. Like, snowboarders don't like the way he's like the biggest name in snowboarding, right? Like, you tell some random person you're a snowboarder and they're like, oh, like Shaun White?
Yeah, he's a Tony Hawk.
Yeah, you just kind of like laugh and you're like, yeah, like Shaun White. But like, I feel like the core of snowboarding doesn't really like the way he portrays snowboarding, I think, is basically what that whole thing is.
And it's also funny with him because the core of snowboarding thought he was like the hottest shit ever when he was 9 to 14 because it was so crazy to see a little kid kill it like he was doing it back then when they had that chopper program.
For sure.
It's totally flipped on him. And yeah, I mean, I saw him one year at an X Games Target party, and walking into the party, he was kind of behind me walking in, and he went straight into a garage and played guitar all night and didn't talk to anybody. And he was really good on a guitar, but to me, it was like, if you're that person and you show up at a party that's pretty much for you and you don't talk to anybody, that means people might not want to be talking to you. And it was all industry people. It's kind of weird to me.
Yeah, I don't know what it is. I think maybe it's because he's so competitive and he is Shaun White. Like, it can't be easy, right? So I think he's just a different dude. I don't know, different mentality for sure than a lot of other snowboarders.
That's him. We don't really need to talk about him. You go to the Olympics, you compete in the Olympics, and you get 4th. That is the worst place to finish, in my opinion. If you get 10th, dude, you can be like, dude, I just didn't have it today. But when you get 4th, you're like, fuck, man, I almost had a medal, and I didn't get one.
I know, 4th is like the worst, because you did good, but not quite good enough. And it really is like, you get no attention. Not that like that's what I'm after, but like the difference from podium to 4th is like not that far away, but it's like, what happens, it's completely different.
Yeah, you're not even a person at that point if you're not on that podium. I mean, I would say even the silver and bronze compared to the gold is like night and day. I mean, at least they're in the picture, though.
Yeah, for sure. How about that W?
Are you bummed after the Olympics? Or, I mean, how do you feel after you get 4th place? Are you happy with how like everything goes in terms of the judging and everything? And then Are you bummed with the result, or are you just stoked to have competed in the Olympics?
I don't think I would say I'm bummed. Like, I did pretty much as good as I could have done. There was probably like a couple tricks I was chasing before that I didn't necessarily like get into as much as I wanted. Like, I needed another little like power move in there, but I just couldn't figure them out before the contest. Like, just kind of ran out of time. That's what I'm bummed on. Like, I wish I like put in a little more time and effort a little earlier and started working towards this sooner. But kind of afterwards, I was just kind of stoked that it was over. It was just kind of like a big relief. I'm like, okay, nice.
You can snowboard again?
Yeah, I can stop thinking about this crazy contest. But it was actually just pretty cool. I was stoked. I wasn't bummed for sure.
Are you going to make a run for it again for the next one? I think your brother could be on the same team as you if you did, but you'll be 26 at that point. Is that something in your future?
You know, I've thought about it a lot, like especially like after the whole Olympics and like getting fourth, I was like, man, this makes me want to come back for sure. But that being said, I don't know where I'll be when I'm 26. I don't really know what'll happen. Like this year for sure, I'm going to take a little like hiatus from all the contests. Like I'm still going to do a couple, but I'm definitely not going to be so contest heavy this year. I'm definitely going to try to film like a legit video part and kind of focus on that side of snowboarding for the next couple of years, I think. And then maybe like a couple of years before, I'll start thinking about really shredding half pipe hard. And if things are going well, then I think I'll probably try and go again.
Well, cool. That'll be quite the challenge. At this point in the show, I'm going to jump into Inappropriate Questions. And I talked with Mike Yoshida a couple weeks ago, and I had him come up with 3 inappropriate questions for you. It's Mike Yoshida, so they're not very inappropriate, unfortunately. But I am going to queue up the first question right now.
What's up with the rudder arm? It's the back arm, bent usually at a 90-degree angle, trailing rudder arm. Is that a tribute to Josh Dirksen, or is that just kind of something you naturally came about over the years?
Okay, so the rudder arm, it used to be flipped upside down and went the other way, and it did not look good. This was actually like a mental thing that I remember doing, but I remember seeing like, we were just riding early season, Copper Mountain. There's all these sorts of like crazy half-pipe snowboarders there. I was pretty young. And I remember seeing just like Dan Davis cruise down the run below us. We were on the chair.
Mm-hmm.
I watched him go down and he was like holding his arm out to the side like that. And I was like, man, that looks kind of cool. I'm going to start doing that. And that's kind of how the rudder arm started. Kind of pulled that off of Dan.
All right. So now we will jump into question number 2.
So you partake in chewing tobacco. You're sponsored by a beer company and also Harley Davidson. Does that mean that you're a Trump supporter?
I think he was asking about your political affiliation.
Talking politics now.
Yeah, I guess that's inappropriate, I guess, for Yoshida. He's going to say political first, and he's going to say, were you a Trump supporter?
I would say despite the chewing tobacco, the beers, and the motorcycles, the American motorcycles, I'm definitely not a Trump supporter, actually.
Okay, and then sponsors earlier, you didn't mention Harley Davidson.
That one's done. I'm bummed on that one. I'm not riding for them anymore. They kind of changed up their program, but I did ride for them for like a couple of years, and it was awesome.
Did they drop Lutska too?
I think they still got Letska.
Okay.
I got to go on a trip with them, actually. We all rode motorcycles. We rode to X Games from Milwaukee, and it was pretty fun. Got to hang with Letska and a couple other like Harley dudes, and pretty sweet. They gave me a bike and hooked me up. It was dope.
I see Letska post stuff all the time, so I think he might be still part of that program.
That bastard.
And it's weird having a combination of a beer sponsorship and a motorcycle sponsorship, but you don't have a motorcycle sponsorship anymore, so that doesn't really matter.
No.
Now I will jump into your final question.
Who's got a better method, you or your brother Gabe?
That was an easy question for you.
That one's hard, I feel like. Gabe's been stepping his method game up. I think Gabe might have me beat now. I would say a couple of years ago, I definitely had a better method than him, but it is getting pretty fiery.
And is there competition between the brothers?
Oh, yeah.
Like pretty serious?
We definitely just want each other to like shred as much as we can, but we push each other for sure. He wants to beat me, definitely. And I definitely want to beat him. That's for sure.
And has he beat you?
He has, yeah. I think it's been a little bit, but he's definitely beaten me.
And that first time he beat you, was he smiling like, hey, dude, I fucking told you it was going to happen?
He loves it.
Okay.
He loves it.
All right, man. Well, I think at this point, that's our podcast. I think your future involves just snowboarding, not looking at a half pipe at all until maybe a week before the contest if you do one this year, and drinking a lot of 10 barrel and enjoying life, man. I mean, fourth place sucks, but you know what? If you do it next time, maybe you and your brother can be the first brothers on a podium together. 2 brothers, 1 podium. I haven't seen the video, but it would be amazing.
Sounds like something I'd be into.
That's weird. So that was time with Ben Ferguson. His story is an interesting one. He has the talent to win the Olympics, but if you listen to him talk, his mindset is all about snowboarding, not being the best in pipe. It took a sponsor to push him and get him into Olympic shape this time around. And while he has the talent, he's not even sure if he wants another opportunity at Olympic gold. I guess there's something to be said for having fun. So don't look for big things from Ben this winter, because the only big thing that he should be producing is a smile on his face and some cool footage. Now is the time of the show where I want to ask you to reach out to me with any questions or concerns. My email is mike@thepowellmovement.com, and I will get back to you. I also want to ask you to review me on whatever platform you listen to me on. If you're on an iPhone, here's what you need to do. Go to iTunes or Apple Podcasts, search for The Powell Movement, scroll down to where you see the stars, give me 5 stars, and you're done. You can add a detailed review of me as well, but that's going above and beyond the call of duty. 5 stars is enough, it's appreciated, and I thank you for doing it. Finally, I want to thank my sponsors for making the show happen. They are Evo, Rescue Water, Spy Optic, Outdoor Research, and the 10 Barrel Brewery. Have a great week, everyone.